First contact gone wrong. Supreme Commander Vextal stood before the grand observation window of the Meraxian flagship Eternal Glory, her iridescent scales reflecting the distant light of Earth's sun. The holographic displays surrounding her position showed countless streams of data, military assessments, cultural analyses, and behavioral predictions, all pointing to what should have been an easy diplomatic victory. Supreme Commander, her second-in-command, Ixal, approached with measured steps. The human delegation has arrived at the designated coordinates. They appear to be using a simple transport vessel, as requested. Vextal's inner membranes flickered with satisfaction. The humans had followed the protocols precisely, just as the predictive matrices had suggested they would. Such an obedient, orderly species. This would be simple. Very good, she responded, her translator converting her harmonic speech into standard galactic common. Prepare the boarding tubes. Let's show them proper Meraxian hospitality. The human vessel was dwarfed by the Eternal Glory, a deliberate choice in staging. The Meraxian Dominion had perfected the art of first contact over thousands of cycles, and everything about this encounter had been carefully choreographed to establish the correct power dynamic. As the human delegation was escorted into the grand meeting chamber, Vextal noticed something her behavioral specialists hadn't predicted. The human showed no signs of intimidation. Their 5 representatives, 3 female, 2 male by their records, walked with straight backs and steady gazes, taking in the cavernous space with what appeared to be genuine curiosity rather than awe. Ambassador Sarah Chen, the designated human spokesperson, stepped forward. Supreme Commander Vextal, on behalf of the United Earth Government, we thank you for this opportunity for dialogue. Vextal activated the ceremonial lights, bathing the chamber in the colors of Meraxian authority. We welcome you, humans, to the first step in your species advancement. The Meraxian Dominion has guided many emerging civilizations toward their proper place in the galactic order. Chen's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. We appreciate the Dominion's interest in Earth, though I should clarify that we don't consider ourselves an emerging civilization. We're here to discuss mutual cooperation and trade agreements. A ripple of harmonic laughter echoed through the Meraxian delegation. Vextal raised a primary appendage for silence. Your confidence is admirable, but perhaps premature. Our scans show your technology is at least 3 centuries behind galactic standard. Your ships lack quantum displacement drives. Your weapon systems are based on primitive kinetic principles. Even this diplomatic vessel you arrived in demonstrates. Commander, Chen interrupted smoothly. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. We came in this vessel because your protocols requested minimal technology. Our actual capabilities are somewhat different. Ixal stepped forward, mandibles clicking in agitation. You dare interrupt the Supreme Commander? This is a diplomatic meeting between equals, Chen stated firmly. We studied your historical records before agreeing to this encounter. The Meraxian Dominion has a pattern of using first contact scenarios to establish dominance over other species, typically followed by resource demands, and eventually forced integration into your empire. Vextal's scales darkened with anger. You were given access to historical records. No, Chen smiled slightly. We weren't, which is precisely why we acquired them ourselves. Consider it a demonstration of those capabilities I mentioned. The chamber's atmosphere shifted palpably. Vextal's security detail moved closer, their weapon appendages twitching. Your species has a decision to make, Chen continued, seemingly oblivious to the rising tension. You can accept that humanity is ready for genuine diplomatic relations, or you can continue with whatever power play you had planned. But before you choose, you should know that this transport vessel isn't as simple as it appears, and Earth has many more surprises in store. Vextal's inner membranes pulsed with rage. This was unprecedented. No species had ever dared to challenge the Dominion's authority during first contact. The behavioral matrices had indicated a 99.8% probability of human compliance. How had they miscalculated so severely? "You threaten us," she hissed. "Here, aboard our own flagship." "Not at all," Chen replied. "We're simply being transparent about our position. The Dominion can either adapt its approach or—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Learn why several other spacefaring civilizations warned you specifically to avoid Earth's sector." The chamber erupted in chaos. Meraxian guards activated their energy shields, security protocols kicked in, and warning lights began to pulse. But through it all, the human delegation remained perfectly calm. Vextal raised all four of her primary appendages, demanding order. "You were warned about us." "By whom?" "By those who learn that humanity doesn't respond well to intimidation," Chen answered. "We're peaceful by nature and preference, Commander. But we're not naive, and we're certainly not submissive. The choice of how we proceed is yours." As if to punctuate Chen's words, new data began streaming across Vextal's neural interface. Somehow, during the conversation, the human's simple transport vessel had been transmitting massive amounts of data throughout the Eternal Glory systems. Star charts, military assessments, technological schematics, centuries of carefully guarded Meraxian secrets, laid bare. Vextal felt her scales pale. The humans hadn't come to be evaluated. They'd come to deliver a message. And in doing so, they'd demonstrated more technological sophistication than the Dominion's best analysts had believed possible. "Perhaps," Vextal said carefully, her rage giving way to a new and unfamiliar sensation. "Fear. We should restart these discussions from a different perspective." Chen's smile returned, genuine this time. "That would be wise. After all, Supreme Commander, the purpose of first contact shouldn't be to establish dominance. It should be to forge connections that benefit both parties. Shall we begin again?" The Meraxian leader looked at the five humans standing before her, finally seeing them clearly. They were smaller than their species, physically unimposing, and yet they had completely dismantled the Dominion's carefully crafted first contact protocols in less than an hour. "Yes," Vextal replied, making a decision that would alter the course of Meraxian history. "Let us begin again, but this time as equals." What she didn't say, what she didn't need to say, was that the Meraxian Dominion had just learned its first lesson about humanity. You don't underestimate them. Not if you want to survive. The price of arrogance. High Admiral Kivex paced the length of the Meraxian war chamber, his talons clicking against the polished obsidian floor. The emergency session of the High Command had stretched into its fourth cycle, and still, they had no answers. On the massive holographic display dominating the center of the room, footage from the disastrous first contact meeting played on repeat. "Impossible," muttered Strategic Director Melthar, his scales shifting to a deep shade of distress. "Our infiltration protocols were perfect. No species at their development stage should have been able to access our secure databases, let alone during a controlled diplomatic encounter." Kivex stopped his pacing, turning to face the assembled command staff. "And yet they did. Not only that, but they extracted enough data to compromise our entire defensive network in this sector. The question isn't how they did it. The question is what we do about it." The humans' diplomatic vessel had long since departed, leaving behind a Meraxian military complex in chaos. System after system had reported unauthorized access, data breaches, and mysterious technological glitches. It was as if the humans had walked through their most secure facilities like ghosts, touching everything, but breaking nothing. "We could launch a preemptive strike," suggested General Yak Still, her battle scales bristling. "We still have superior numbers, and our fleet is compromised," interrupted Kivex. "Or have you forgotten that they now have access to our complete tactical databases? Every strategy, every formation, every contingency plan we've developed over the last 1,000 cycles, they have it all." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Meraxian Dominion had never faced a situation quite like this. Their entire military doctrine was based on overwhelming force and superior information. Now, against all probability, they found themselves on the wrong side of an intelligence gap. A junior analyst rushed into the chamber, breaking all protocols of rank and ceremony. "High Admiral, we've detected something, multiple somethings, approaching our outer defense perimeter." The holographic display shifted, showing a cluster of objects moving at incredible speed toward Meraxian space. They were unlike any ships in the known galaxy, sleek, dark, and somehow difficult for their sensors to focus on. "Are they human vessels?" Kvex demanded. We're not sure, sir. Our sensors can't get a clear read on them. They appear to be using some form of adaptive stealth technology that adjusts to our scanning methods in real time. The strategic director's scales went nearly white. "That's impossible. They couldn't have developed countermeasures to our sensing technology so quickly." A bitter laugh escaped Kvex's throat. "You still don't understand, do you? They didn't develop these countermeasures after our meeting. They already had them. Everything about that diplomatic encounter was a test, not of their capabilities, but of ours." The holographic display suddenly flickered, and a new image appeared, a direct communication signal from the approaching vessels. Ambassador Chen's face filled the screen, her expression neutral but her eyes hard. "High Admiral Kvex," she greeted him. "I trust you've had time to review the data we shared during our previous meeting." Kvex felt his secondary heart skip a beat. "Ambassador, I see you've decided to pay us another visit, with a rather impressive escort this time." "A necessary precaution," Chen replied. "Our analysis of your historical records suggests the Meraxian Dominion has a tendency to respond to diplomatic setbacks with military action. We thought it prudent to demonstrate why that would be inadvisable in this case." As if on cue, the sensor displays lit up with new contacts, hundreds of them, appearing seemingly from nowhere, surrounding not just the defense perimeter, but every major Meraxian military installation in the sector. "How long have they been there?" whispered Nelfar. "The entire time," Kvex realized. "They were watching us before we ever knew they existed." Chen's expression softened slightly. "We don't want conflict, High Admiral. But we need you to understand something fundamental about humanity. We don't achieve technological advancement in neat, predictable stages. We don't follow the conventional paths of development that your analysts are trained to recognize. We adapt, we innovate, and above all, we prepare." The chamber erupted in frantic activity as more sensor data poured in. The human vessels weren't just surrounding them. They were using technologies that violated everything the Meraxians understood about physics and warfare. "What do you want?" Kvex asked, knowing the answer would change everything. "The same thing we wanted from the beginning," Chen replied. "Genuine diplomatic relations, equal partnership. But first, you needed to understand that humans cannot be controlled, subjugated, or manipulated. We've encountered too many species who tried. None of them succeeded." Kvex looked at the sensor displays again, seeing his civilization's carefully constructed military superiority crumble in real time. "And if we refuse?" "We leave," Chen said simply, "taking with us all the technological and scientific advancements we might have shared. And we ensure that every spacefaring race in this sector knows exactly why the Meraxian Dominion can no longer be trusted with advanced knowledge." The High Admiral felt the weight of centuries of Meraxian pride pressing down on him. They had always been the ones dictating terms, establishing dominance, controlling the flow of technology and knowledge. Now, in the span of mere days, they found themselves on the other side of that equation. "Perhaps," he said carefully, "it's time for the Dominion to evolve. Tell me, Ambassador Chen, what would this equal partnership look like?" Chen smiled, but there was steel behind it. "That depends entirely on you, High Admiral. But I suggest we start with a lesson your species seems to need. The galaxy is too vast and too complex for any civilization to think they can stand alone at its summit. Even humans don't make that mistake, and we've survived things you couldn't imagine. As the human vessels maintained their silent vigil around Meraxian space, Kvex realized that this was more than a military or diplomatic defeat. It was an education. And the lesson was clear. In a universe full of ancient and powerful civilizations, humanity had somehow become the species that others warned about. Not because they were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they were the ones who never, ever played by anyone else's rules. Survival lessons. Junior diplomat Nexera had never seen Earth before. From the observation deck of the newly established Meraxian embassy, the planet looked deceptively peaceful, a swirling marble of blue and white, hardly the homeworld of a species that had brought the mighty Dominion to its knees without firing a single shot. She checked her translator one final time before entering the Human Cultural Exchange Center. After the events of the past month, the Dominion had assigned its brightest young diplomats to study humanity up close. Understanding them had become the highest priority for Meraxian survival. Ah, Diplomat Nexera, Dr. James Chen greeted her, and she noted with interest that he was the brother of Ambassador Sarah Chen, ready for today's cultural immersion session. Yes, doctor, she replied, her scales shifting to indicate respectful attention. Though I must admit, your species continues to confound our analytical models. James smiled, leading her through halls lined with artifacts from human history. That's because you're still trying to understand us through Meraxian frameworks. Tell me, what do you see when you look at these exhibits? Nexera studied the displays, primitive tools evolving into more sophisticated ones, a logical progression of technological development, though the pace seems accelerated compared to most species. Look closer, James suggested. What do you notice about the gaps between developments? She examined the timeline more carefully, and suddenly she saw it. The advances, they're not gradual. They come in bursts, often during periods of conflict or crisis. Exactly, James nodded. Humanity doesn't evolve in a straight line. We make quantum leaps in development when pushed to our limits. It's not just about survival. It's about adaptation and innovation under pressure. They moved to another section, this one showing historical footage of human disasters and recoveries. Your species seems to actively seek out challenges, Nexera observed. Even now, with faster-than-light travel achieved, humans still climb mountains without safety equipment and dive into ocean trenches. We call it pushing the envelope, James explained. Every boundary is seen as a challenge. Every limit is viewed as temporary. Do you know why we developed space travel? Your historical records indicate it was a competition between nations, Nexera replied. James laughed. That's what most aliens focus on. But the deeper truth is, we went to space because someone said it was impossible. The same reason we split the atom, mapped the human genome, or developed quantum computing. Tell a human something can't be done, and you've just guaranteed they'll die trying to prove you wrong. They paused before a holographic display showing the evolution of human warfare. Nexera's scales rippled with discomfort as she noticed a pattern. Your weapons, they're not designed solely for efficiency. No, James confirmed. We design them to adapt. Every weapon system we create can be modified, upgraded, and repurposed. It's not about having the biggest gun. It's about having a gun that can become whatever we need it to be. Like your diplomatic vessel, Nexera realized. It wasn't just a ship with hidden capabilities. It was designed to analyze our defenses and adapt to them in real time. Now you're beginning to understand, James said approvingly. Every human creation has multiple purposes, multiple possibilities. We don't build things for what they are. We build them for what they might need to become. They entered a final room, and Nexera froze. The walls were covered with images of human medical procedures, emergency responses, and crisis management. These are survivors, she whispered. More than that, James corrected. These are people who should have died, according to every medical prediction model. But humans have a peculiar trait. We often survive things that should kill us, simply because we refuse to accept death as inevitable. Nexera's analytical mind raced with the implications. This is why the Dominion's behavioral matrices failed. We were measuring your technological capability, your military strength, your industrial capacity. But we should have been measuring your adaptability, your drive to overcome limitations. There's a saying on Earth, James offered. Necessity is the mother of invention. But for humans, necessity isn't just about survival. It's about thriving. About taking whatever situation we're in and not just surviving it, but mastering it. And when the Dominion tried to establish dominance, Nexera began. We recognize the pattern from our own history, James finished. Attempted subjugation always leads to resistance, innovation, and eventually, revolution. We simply chose to skip the intermediate steps and demonstrate our capabilities directly. They stood in silence for a moment, watching a holographic simulation of human neural pathways responding to challenges. Each failure led not to defeat, but to new attempts, new approaches, new solutions. There's something else you should understand about humans, James said softly. We remember every species that tried to conquer us, every civilization that underestimated us, every force that tried to break us. They all taught us something, and we never forget the lessons. Nexera felt a chill despite the room's comfortable temperature. Is that a warning, Dr. Chen? An observation, he replied. The Meraxian Dominion chose wisdom over pride when confronted with evidence of our capabilities. That's why we're having this conversation in an embassy instead of across a battlefield. But remember, humans don't just survive. We learn, we adapt, and we make sure we never face the same threat the same way twice. As Nexera left the cultural center that day, she composed her report to the Dominion High Command with trembling appendages. Her conclusion was simple but profound. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, their adaptability, or even their unpredictability. It was their absolute refusal to accept limitations, any limitations, as permanent. The adaptation. Fleet Commander Rixtal watched in horror as the emergency transmission played across the bridge of the Meraxian defense platform. The Kryvax, ancient enemies of the Dominion, had launched a surprise attack on 3 Meraxian colony worlds, believing the Dominion weakened by their recent diplomatic upheaval with humanity. Status report, she demanded, her scales darkening with rage. The Kryvax fleet has already breached the outer defense grid, her tactical officer reported. Their new phase shift technology renders our standard barriers useless. They're just passing through them like they're not even there. Rixtal's secondary heart clenched. The Kryvax had obviously been planning this for cycles, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And now, with the Dominion still adapting to the new political reality forced by their encounter with humanity, they had chosen to attack. Send word to High Command, she ordered. We need reinforcements. Ma'am, her communications officer interrupted. I'm receiving a transmission. It's from the human embassy. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Ambassador Chen's face. But this time, her usually diplomatic expression was replaced with something harder, more focused. Fleet Commander, Chen said without preamble. We've detected the Kryvax incursion. The Earth Defense Force would like to offer assistance. Rixtal's scales rippled with surprise. Ambassador, while we appreciate the offer, this conflict is about to become significantly more complicated, Chen interrupted. The Kryvax are using phase shift technology stolen from the Arcturian Collective. We've encountered it before. More importantly, we've beaten it before. The tactical display suddenly lit up with new contacts. Human vessels were emerging from what appeared to be fold space, their sleek forms materializing directly in the combat zone. But they were different from the ships Rixtal had seen before. These vessels seemed to shimmer and shift, their very structure somehow fluid and adaptable. What are you doing? Rixtal demanded as the human ships moved to engage the Kryvax fleet, demonstrating why adaptation is humanity's greatest strength. Chen replied. Watch and learn, Commander. This is how humans fight. The battle that followed would be studied in Meraxian war colleges for generations to come. The human ships didn't just engage the Kryvax vessels, they adapted to them. With each exchange of fire, each tactical maneuver, the human vessels seemed to learn and evolve. Impossible, Rikstal's science officer whispered. Their ship's quantum structure is actively reconfiguring in response to the Kryvax phase shift technology. They're not just countering it, they're assimilating it. Chen's voice carried a note of grim satisfaction. We call it reactive engineering. Every human warship is built not just to fight, but to learn. The more our enemies throw at us, the stronger we become. The Kryvax fleet, confident in their technological superiority, had no response to this unprecedented strategy. Their phase shift technology, which had rendered Meraxian defenses useless, was being analyzed, adapted, and turned against them in real time. But how? Rikstal found herself asking as she watched the impossible unfold. How did you develop such technology? We didn't, Chen replied simply. At least, not entirely. Every major advancement in human military technology came from studying our enemies, learning from them, and improving upon their designs. The Arcturians thought their phase shift technology was unbeatable too, until they used it against us. The battle was turning decisively. The human ships, now fully adapted to the Kryvax technology, were systematically dismantling the invasion fleet. But what struck Rikstal most was the precision of it all. The humans weren't just destroying their enemies, they were capturing them, studying them, learning from them even in the midst of combat. Signal from the Kryvax flagship, her communications officer reported. They're requesting surrender terms. Chen's expression remained neutral. The terms are simple. They will withdraw from Meraxian space immediately. They will surrender all phase shift technology and related research. And they will understand that the Earth Defense Force now stands with the Meraxian Dominion against any future aggression. Rikstal's scales shifted in confusion. You would ally with us so openly. After everything that happened, Commander. Chen's voice softened slightly. Humans don't hold grudges against those who learn from their mistakes. The Dominion chose diplomacy over conflict. You chose to adapt rather than persist in error. That makes you exactly the kind of allies we value. As the Kryvax fleet retreated under human escort, Rikstal studied the battle data with growing amazement. The human ships hadn't just won. They had evolved during the fight, becoming something new, something that had never existed before. One last thing, Commander, Chen added before signing off. Consider this a practical demonstration of why trying to outmaneuver humanity never works. We don't just survive challenges. We absorb them, learn from them, and emerge stronger. It's not just our technology that adapts. It's our entire approach to existence. The implications were staggering. The Meraxian Dominion had prided itself on its military might, its technological superiority, its ability to dominate lesser species. But humans didn't seek to dominate technology. They merged with it, adapted it, evolved alongside it. As Rikstal prepared her report for High Command, she realized that the Dominion had been asking the wrong questions all along. The real question wasn't how to compete with humanity's technological prowess. The real question was, how do you fight an enemy that grows stronger from every attack, that learns from every defeat, that turns your very strengths into their own? The answer, as the Kryvax had just learned, was simple. You don't. Understanding the Unbreakable. Grand Archon Zextal stood before the assembled Meraxian High Council, her scales shimmering with the deep blue of profound realization. 1 year had passed since the Dominion's first contact with humanity, and everything had changed. The massive chamber, once a symbol of Meraxian superiority, now felt different, humbler, perhaps, but also wiser. Honorable Council, she began, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. I stand before you today to present our final analysis of humanity, though I suspect final is a word humans would find amusing in this context. The holographic displays activated, showing scenes from the past year. Human ships defending Meraxian colonies, joint scientific ventures, cultural exchanges, and most importantly, the gradual transformation of the Dominion itself. We began our study of humanity believing we were examining a lesser species, Zextal continued. We thought we would catalog their weaknesses, document their limitations, and determine their proper place in our hierarchy. Instead, we learned why such hierarchies are fundamentally flawed. She gestured, and the displays showed footage from a recent joint military exercise. Human and Meraxian ships maneuvered together, each species complementing the other's strengths. The Kryvax incident taught us something crucial about humans. We watched their ships adapt to enemy technology in real time, but that was merely a surface-level demonstration of their true capability. The real revelation was this: humans don't just adapt their technology, they adapt their entire civilization. The council chamber stirred with murmurs as Zextal brought up new data streams. Look at our own civilization since first contact. Our military doctrine has been revolutionized. Our scientific understanding has expanded exponentially. Our cultural assumptions have been challenged and reformed. And all of this happened not because humans forced change upon us, but because they showed us a better way to exist. But surely, interrupted Council Member Thrax, this only proves their superiority. How is this different from our own method of uplifting lesser species? Zextal's scales rippled with something approaching amusement. Because, honored Thrax, humans don't believe in superior or lesser species. They don't seek to uplift or dominate. They seek to connect, to learn, and to grow together. When they share their knowledge, they expect and encourage us to improve upon it. When they teach, they also learn. The displays shifted to show human children in a classroom, studying alongside young Meraxians in the new joint education program. This is their true strength, Zextal explained. Not their adaptability, not their technology, not even their remarkable ability to survive. Their true strength is their fundamental understanding that growth and evolution are endless processes. They don't see themselves as the pinnacle of development. They see themselves as eternal students of the universe. She paused, allowing her next words to carry their full weight. And this is why you don't kill humans. Not because they're unkillable, they're as mortal as any species. Not because they're more advanced. In many ways, they're still catching up to galactic standards. You don't kill humans because they represent something far more important than any single species' survival. The chamber was completely silent now. Every council member's scales shifted to the deep purple of intense focus. Humans represent the possibility of endless growth, Zextal continued. They are living proof that there is no final form, no ultimate achievement, no peak of civilization. Every limitation they encounter becomes a challenge to overcome. Every boundary becomes a horizon to explore. Every defeat becomes a lesson to learn. She brought up one final display. A simple graph showing the development rates of various species. The Meraxian line was steady and upward trending. The human line was chaotic, filled with spikes and dips, but its overall trajectory was nearly vertical. We thought we were studying them, but they were teaching us that true strength isn't about maintaining superiority. It's about maintaining growth. True power isn't about controlling others. It's about controlling your own evolution. And true wisdom isn't about knowing everything. It's about being willing to learn anything. Zextal's scales shifted to the gold of formal proclamation. Therefore, I propose a fundamental restructuring of the Meraxian Dominion. No more conquest. No more subjugation. No more artificial hierarchies. Instead, we will follow humanity's example. We will become students of the universe, partners in growth, allies in evolution. The council chamber erupted in discussion, but Zextal noticed something remarkable. The debate wasn't about whether to accept this new path. It was about how best to implement it. In just 1 year, humanity had done more than defend against the Dominion's aggression or demonstrate their technological prowess. They had shown an entire civilization a better way to exist. As the council session continued, Zextal received a private message from Ambassador Chen. Congratulations on taking the first step. Remember, the journey of growth never ends. It just becomes more interesting with each new discovery. Zextal's response was simple. We understand now. You don't kill humans not because you can't, but because killing them would mean killing the very spirit of growth and adaptation that makes the universe worth exploring. Thank you for teaching us to be students rather than conquerors. The message Chen sent back would become famous throughout the Dominion. Welcome to humanity's real mission, not to rule the galaxy, but to ensure it never stops growing. After all, what's the point of reaching for the stars if you're not willing to dance with them? And so the Meraxian Dominion learned the ultimate truth about humanity. They weren't unbreakable because they couldn't be broken. They were unbreakable because they had mastered the art of rebuilding themselves, better and stronger, from any challenge they faced. In the end, you don't kill humans because doing so would diminish not just humanity, but the entire universe's potential for growth.